lot of things I've learned along the way of my transition, and I thought I would share some with you in Tips for Transgender Women. Hi, I'm Blvd Maia, and I talk about everything in my transgender lesbian life that you would really like to know about, but are afraid to ask, because greater understanding makes the world a better place for all of us. First thing I'm going to say is pay no attention to the cat over my right shoulder. This is Emma, and she belongs to my new roommate. And cats lay where they want to, so I'm just gonna let her rest for the afternoon there. One of the more interesting things about transitioning at middle age is that I had to learn a lot of new skills that as a transgender woman were very surprising to me. So I thought I would share some of that knowledge and save you the trouble. And the first thing on that list, in fact the very top thing on this list, is find yourself a good hairstylist. Now a cisgender woman would tell you the same thing. However, to a transgender woman, they are worth their weight in gold. Because I don't know if there is a more feminizing aspect than your hair. As much as we don't like to admit it, long hair is a pretty strong marker of femininity, as is your hairline and whether it's receding or not. A good hairstylist would be able to style your wig as well as put in extensions. I started out with very, very short hair, and I went from this to this with a good stylist. And a good source for them are other transgender women in your neighborhood. Now, along the lines of personal style, my advice is go with lip stain over lipstick. Well, you might ask why. It is a hell of a lot less messy. I've personally always hated lipstick, the smell, the kind of greasy smell it has. I hate that kind of nasty, kind of weird shape that lipstick gets when you start using it for a long time. And then the tip breaks off and it gets in your teeth, and you don't want to have tip in your teeth. I have an audience for this, by the way, if you heard that laugh. I have never ever used lipstick when it is at all possible to avoid it. The lip stains come with a handy little brush and they're just so much easier to apply precisely to your lips. Plus, if you pair it with a little bit of gloss, you'll still get that shiny look. It will last a lot longer and won't rub off on everything. The next handy thing I learned actually pretty early on, and it is that men think opening the door for you is their job. I still remember maybe about 2 months in, I was working at Disney and we were on tour. It was a group of men and women. In fact, it was only one guy. He was an older gentleman, and we all walked to the door at the same time, and as I reached for it, he reached for it at the same time, and he looked at me like I shot his puppy. So hurt and so kind of visually affronted at what I just tried that I just kind of reflexively just let go of the door and let him open it for me. And just this week I had a guy go, oh, and just like kind of get in the way and open a door for me when I didn't ask him to. I got to the door first. Now the funny thing about that guy is that if he knew I was transgender, I sometimes wonder if he would open the door for me. I'm not so sure. I'm not saying that I'll never let a man open a door for me. If he gets there before me, let him open a door. Sure, I will walk through. But if I get there before him, there is no shame in having me open the door and hold it for him. Yes, I understand that guys are just trying to be nice and polite, but in a very real sense, it's a kind of power play. I think politeness goes both ways. A lot of people will say that transgender women are unattractive, that they don't want to date us. And cisgender men will particularly say that. A cisgender guy isn't willing to date you out in public, he's trash. But the funny thing is, and I don't have a whole lot of first-hand experience at this because I'm a lesbian, but every transgender woman I know who is straight will tell me that they have no problem finding men, cisgender men, who will f them. If all he wants from you is a booty call, then he really doesn't respect you. And really quickly, women can do this a little bit too, and my advice would be the same for that. You do not want to be a sexual thrill for cisgender people. Let that dog go. The next vital piece of advice I'm going to give you is that you need to find your person. Now, what do I mean by your person? I mean your Gayle King. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm sorry, you know nothing about pop culture. But briefly, Gayle King is Oprah Winfrey's very, very best friend. Now, your person doesn't necessarily need to be a cisgender woman, but it is a huge bonus if it is. Another transgender woman will be able to relate to you, but you're gonna find a lot of transgender women out there who'll be able to support you. However, a cisgender woman, you know, depending on when you've come out, has probably been a woman for a lot longer than you have, and has a lot more experience, and is gonna be able to guide you through a lot of trials and tribulations that you will have experienced for the first time, perhaps sometimes at middle age. You need that 3 a.m. phone call person, that person who will be there for you whenever you need her, because you're going to be seeing a lot of probably tough things in the future. The suicide rate in the transgender community is pretty high. This is already hard enough to do alone. Don't do it alone if you can avoid it. All that being said, it is very likely that most of your friends are going to be cisgender, and they are not going to perfectly understand what you're going through. So don't expect perfection from your allies. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that they're going to make mistakes. They may say things that make you cringe inside and may even hurt, even if they are part of the LGBTQ you in general. Being lesbian, being gay, being bisexual, being queer is nothing like being transgender. They are occasionally going to hurt your feelings. It is unavoidable. But about 86% of the people out there say they've never met a transgender person. You may be the very first. And unfortunately, one of the things that comes with this deal is a lot of education. So they're going to have a lot of questions, and some of those questions may be indelicate. And it's probably a good thing to approach a lot of those with humor and to laugh about it, because if you cry about it, you're gonna be crying a lot. And for your mental health, you should pick and choose those battles. If the first thing you do is cut them off, then it's not gonna take very long before you have no friends at all. However, there is one thing I'm going to encourage you to nip in the bud right away with them, and that is this welcome to womanhood phrase. I hate that. It drives me nuts because they'll never stop using it. 8 years down the line and something will happen to you and they'll say, welcome to womanhood. Let them know up front that that is not an acceptable thing to say. Because the subtext of that is, yes, you are transgender, you've never experienced this before because you lived a male life in the past, and you may have forgotten that you're transgender, but I haven't. They may not realize that that's what they're saying, but that is actually what they really are saying. It's like being an eternal newbie, and who wants to be that? You shouldn't accept it. Another important tip, and some of you may have already experienced this in your past life, if you've worn women's clothes at all, it is that women's sizing is completely arbitrary and made up. You could be a size 10 in one brand and a size 4 in another, and there is no rhyme or reason for why that is. Because clothing manufacturers are kind of wise to the idea that you're more likely to buy something that says it's a size 4 than something that says it's a size 10. But it also makes things much more difficult to order off the internet for yourself if you aren't familiar with how that brand's sizes fit you. So as hard as it may be, especially when you're starting out, you really need to go to the dressing room and try those clothes on. Otherwise, you're going to be making a lot of trips back and forth to the store exchanging things because you figured out when you got home that the size doesn't fit. This is completely different than male sizing. Male sizing is like by inches and exact kind of measurements. Women's jeans are going to be like a size 10 or a size 16, whereas a guy's pants is going to be a 34, 36, which has to do with inches around the waist and, you know, inseam length. Those good old days are way behind you. And when you're in those dressing rooms, my suggestion would be to bring a cisgender woman with you to let you know how it looks. Now, why do I say a cisgender woman and not a transgender woman? Because transgender women lie a lot about the way you look. They're not so much commenting on you and the way you look so much as they are commenting on themselves and their own insecurities. I've been on countless internet forums that I've seen somebody post a photo of themselves wearing something and somebody say, that looks great on you. And I think to myself, no, that actually doesn't look that great on you. I never say that because that would just be plain rude. But I think as transgender women, we have an obligation to tell the truth to other transgender women because safety is an issue. If we pump people up with false confidence and then send them out into the world, well, they could run into some trouble. If you have a trusted cisgender friend, in my experience, she's gonna tell you the truth. She may not tell you it looks awful like straight out, although I know a few who would, Jen. But what I've often seen is they'll kind of guide you to something that they feel will look better on you. They'll say, why don't you try this instead? Why don't you try that instead? And they'll say, oh wow, that looks amazing, go with that. Now, when you're trying on clothes, my next tip is to skip over the heels entirely. Heels are just a pain in the ass. And I don't really care how tall you are, because this isn't one of those, if you're really tall and you wear heels and you're a transgender woman, you're gonna be easily spottable as a transgender woman. I'm only 5'5". I could get away with wearing most pairs of heels, but I almost never do nowadays unless the situation absolutely calls for it. Like maybe a job interview or somebody's wedding or some other formal event. And even then, I do carefully evaluate, could I get away with flats? I'm telling you this as somebody who absolutely loves high heels. I mean, look at this beautiful suede pump. Oh my God, I love this thing so much. I never wear it. You see this 4-inch heel? Even with these cushions on the inside, within about 3 hours, I'm done. I can't walk anymore. I used to think that cisgender women had a secret formula, that they knew how to walk in their heels all night and they were great at it. Well, if you go to any wedding, there will come a time when all the women have taken off their heels and they're dancing in the middle of their dance floor barefoot. Yes, you can learn to tolerate the pain, but it is always painful and not good for your feet, even if they're beautiful. And the final tip I'm going to leave you with is whether somebody else can tell that you're a transgender woman is very often context specific, and you really shouldn't take it to heart. Perception is a whole lot about expectation. A lot of people don't notice us when you were walking by on the street because a lot of people don't ever expect to see a transgender woman. They think we're kind of extremely rare. It's almost like expecting to see a unicorn. Nobody expects to see a unicorn. One of the things that has happened to me is that I have been read as a transgender woman in specific circumstances. I once came out to a fellow employee at Disney and she said, oh yeah, I already knew you were trans. pants. And it wasn't because somebody had told her, it was because there was a rumor that there was a transgender woman working on our particular ride. And she looked around at all the other women and she figured that I kind of most closely fit the body type of a transgender woman. And I must admit, I was a tiny bit hurt when it happened at the time, but after a while I got over it. Because you know what, being seen as a transgender woman shouldn't be a terrible thing. Yes, we need to be careful about it, but I'm proud to be a transgender woman. I don't think being a transgender woman necessarily automatically means that you're ugly or unattractive. So I own it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I'm going to leave things right there. I do have other tips, I'm going to leave them for future videos, but I do want to hear about what tips you might have, so put those in the comments. As always, my socials are down below, and if you have a dime to spare, please consider giving to my Patreon. And on that note, please like this video by giving it a thumbs up, please share this video, and please subscribe, and see you around the interwebs.